Well, if you're like me, you plan most Sundays this time of year around the Patriots schedule. Midway through the season, the Pats are back to their winning ways, leading their division. But the NFL itself is having a rocky year, at least from a public relations standpoint. This year alone, more than 40 players have been arrested, most notably former Patriots tight end Aaron Hernandez, who's standing trial for murder. Then there's the bad press generated from the Frontline documentary League of Denial, exposing the NFL's efforts to cover up concussion risks. And now, sports talk radio is all abuzz over reports of ruthless hazing in the Miami Dolphins locker room. It's a story that's transcended the sports pages, and it raises questions about what's expected and tolerated in the NFL. The story seemed simple at first. Miami Dolphins tackle Jonathan Martin left the team, saying he was bullied by left guard Richie Incognito. To prove his point, he released a vile voicemail Incognito left on his phone months ago.
Hey, what's up, you half-blank piece of blank?
And as this TMZ video taken at a South Florida bar shows, Incognito is clearly capable of boorish behavior. Jonathan Martin said the final straw came for him when Incognito and other team members stood up to leave when he sat down at a lunch table, an apparent rookie hazing ritual. When a reporter caught up with Incognito earlier this week, he had little to say.
We're just going to kind of weather the storm, and that's it.
By the time this black Ferrari was delivered to his driveway on Tuesday, though, Incognito had been suspended indefinitely. But now Miami Dolphins are coming forward to support Incognito.
We brought a lot of cohesiveness to this locker room, and he was the best teammate that I could ask for.
I got a lot of respect for Richie. I love playing with Richie. I wish he was here right now.
As for hazing and bullying in the locker room, Dolphins coach Joe Philbin says that's not the tone he sets.
The type of culture that I've championed since the day that I walked through these doors has been one of honesty, respect, and accountability to one another.
But former Dolphin-turned-radio host Channing Crowder says outlandish locker room behavior is the norm.
And in that locker room, it is like a pack of wolves, like I keep describing it, because you have to find your pecking order. They have an ego, and they need to prove what people call their manhood on a daily basis.
And the one he says the Dolphins would most welcome back is Richie Incognito. My first guest is one of only two full-time female NFL beat reporters. Shalise Manzat-Young covers the Patriots for the Boston Globe. Welcome, Shalise. Good to have you.
Thank you.
What is your experience? What is your observations in the locker room and then on a broader expanse of how the players interact?
Well, I work primarily in the Patriots locker room, and they do a very good job of being as professional as possible in front of us. There are certainly things that we hear quite a bit. We see the players coming in off the field from practice, and they're all fired up because, they've just been working out together for a couple of hours, and the defense maybe won the day against the offense, those sorts of things. And we hear guys, ribbing each other back and forth, certainly. And I think that's just the culture. These guys are together so much, and you hear so many players say it's a brotherhood. But I think certainly there's a line. And we did hear Patriots captains this week talk about you have to be cognizant that there is a line, and everything's in good fun. The Patriots themselves, they do at the end of training camp every year, they get all the rookies together and they give them haircuts, and they're certainly not stylish haircuts. They might put if it's, Tom Brady has before put the logo of Michigan where he went to school into one, shaved it into a rookie's head. But that's, as far as we know, that's kind of the extent of it. And sometimes you might have rookies pay for dinners and things like that.
Yeah,
but
apparently that was one of the issues.
Right,
here too.
But there's always
what about the
line.
language? Mm-hmm. I mean, sparring, right, using the N-word or calling each other women and that kind of stuff, does that happen too?
Yes, but unfortunately, the N-word's become a colloquialism in African-American culture. I, cringe whenever I hear it. I'm half black myself. My husband is black. So, we've obviously grown up in that culture, and it's something that you hear in music. It's something that, a lot of these players are under the age of 30, and they feel like it's okay to toss that word around. I feel like even more it crosses the line if it's a white player saying it to a black player, as Incognito did. But, I guess it's, younger guys almost look at it a different light, which is sad.
What about to the bigger issue here, that maybe this really wasn't a case of bullying, that that's the way things go down all the time, and really Martin just wanted to get out of Dodge. He wanted to take his money and leave.
It seems like there is some of that. The truth is, the NFL in general, it's not for everybody, in the same way that maybe my job is not for everybody. And it's a very difficult, demanding environment to be in. You do have to be able to take the ribbing, as teammates have said. And, if it's not cut out for him, and that is ultimately what ends up happening, I think obviously he could have handled it far more graciously than he did. But it's a complicated issue. It seems like almost every hour this week there's been something new that's come out, because originally it just looked like this older white player beating up on a smart black player, and it's clearly
it is more than that. I want to bring in now Dan Leibovitz, who heads up the Sport in Society program at Northeastern University. Dan, we've kind of talked a little bit about these kinds of issues before, but one of the things that struck me, looking at all the video and reading all the stories, a great piece in the Globe today by Ben Venota, but is this issue of manhood. And a lot of the men were talking about that, the way they interact with each other, the banter. It's all about being a man, and you got to be a man to be in the NFL, and you got to be. It's like, oh man, all that stuff, and that's, you saw the behavior of Incognito. It's like, really? That's being a man?
Well, I think that, the problem in many respects, and we've talked about this in relation to a lot of other times that we've had conversation, is what is the construct of manhood, not only in the landscape of sport, but in the larger landscape of the country? Why is it that we think that kindness and compassion and respect for one another and respect for women, all these issues, why is that somehow mutually exclusive from what we consider to be the construct of manhood? And so when you take that problem that is really woven throughout the social fabric of our country and worldwide, and then you take the hyper-masculine world of what the NFL is, you've sort of exacerbated that issue to its highest level. And so, there has been a lot that's come out in this story back and forth, and yet the question still remains for me is, what did Jonathan Martin feel? Could it be possible that in that structure that he felt like he is a man? He was, but it doesn't mean that him feeling that he was being emotionally abused is unmanly. Why do we have to automatically assume that it's unmanly? It could be that he did feel emotional abuse. It could be that the locker room has taken that hyper-masculine level to a level that's even higher and made it uncomfortable in many respects. And a lot of people that conform to it, maybe they're just fronting. In many respects, maybe they feel the same way as Martin, but they realize their livelihood, their longevity in the league, all these things are at risk, and so they conform to something they may not even agree to.
But it's bizarre that the NFL promotes this in a sense. I mean, I don't know about the Globe, but certainly at WGBH or an academic environment, you'd lose your job for behaving like that, for using that kind of language, for intimidating people like that. I mean, why is it condoned there?
Because that's the toughness they look for. They look for, when scouts are sent out to find the players that are going to be brought onto their team, they look for toughness. And a lot of times in the NFL, it's not just physical toughness. It's not just how much weight you can push around in the weight room. It's, having the ability to stand up to people and being the toughest guy in the room, the guy that people are just intimidated by.
That's a good point, because many of the reports since this all came out have said that Incognito was asked to toughen up Jonathan Martin, to make him more of a man, because he was reflective, he was thoughtful, he wasn't like an out there kind of guy.
Right, and again, this goes back to the other point around what we celebrate in the entirety of our culture. Think about it if you look at this as a bullying incident, like it's been reported a million times, think about it on an elementary school playground or a middle school playground, and how people are singled out for being intellectual or the phrase nerds or all the other things. So we live in a culture that basically is promulgated in many respects by the $121 trillion global sports industry, and the concept of manhood that's sort of woven throughout that industry. And so what we need to do as a culture is figure out where is it that you find those common intersections of intellectualism, or using sport as a vehicle for intellectualism and the movement of the entire society towards better behavior. I mean, this is behavior that isn't, while we try to compartmentalize it and say that it's just the NFL, it reflects later in other issues that we have in terms of domestic violence and a variety of other things that come out. And it's not just an NFL problem. It happens in business. It happens in politics. It's woven through the social fabric of our country. And if something is this big, the NFL's on this big a platform, right now they have this teaching moment, a great opportunity to take a leadership role in talking about this bullying issue and opening up an ongoing conversation about giving people the skill set and the toolkits to do better, to be empowered, and have those bystanders in the locker room understand, even in that hypermasculine culture, that this person was hurting and step in and do something about it.
All right, Dan Leibovitz and Shalise Munzet Young, thanks so much for coming. Great conversation.